My name is Rev.Juanita Adams. I've been a member of Mount Gilead for 8 years. This past May made 8 years. At the time that I came to Mount Gilead, I was probably maybe 3 years into the crisis. And when I say crisis, it was one of the darkest periods of my life, a very challenging time in my life where I really had to trust God as never before, in trusting and believing that He was with me and that He would bring me through and bring me out. I was married to a minister in the gospel. We pastored a church together. We'd been married actually for 25 years. The Lord had blessed us to start a ministry, and it was growing. It was doing very well. We were about 8 years into the ministry. I had begun to suspect that there were some things going on with my husband. I wasn't sure, but I just felt some uncomfortable things about him. But he was very clever to not let me catch him in anything. But also, a part of what I dealt with was once I really began to sense that he was into a lot of had a lot of problems going on. I really was afraid to face some of what I felt. But we had been married for 25 years. We had pastored for about 8 years. Shortly after our 25th wedding anniversary, my husband, who was a very gifted man of God, very gifted, very anointed, was very powerful in the Word, a mighty preacher in the Word, a man that was very talented. He could write music. He operated in the prophetic, the office of the prophet. Just had many giftings, and but at the end of our 25th year, our 25th wedding anniversary, my husband was on his way to a ministry engagement in Colorado, and he was arrested at the Richmond airport for possession of crack cocaine in his pocket. And when I got the call, because I had driven him to the airport early that morning, but when I got the call several hours later, I could not believe, and my first thought was, there's been some mistake, but it really was true. He had been apprehended for possession of crack cocaine. And with this arrest, seemingly it seemed like it just kind of turned my whole world upside down. If you can imagine your worst nightmare, that's what this seemed like to me, the worst possible nightmare. In essence, it proved to be a blessing, because with this happening, it opened the door for the Lord to start unveiling and exposing a lot of the secrets my husband had. I really learned that he had been living a secret life for quite some time. Along with exposing the drugs, the Lord also exposed other areas of brokenness that he had. He was dealing with same-sex relationships. He was also into cross-dressing, pornography. He also dealt with alcohol, substance. He had some addiction to alcohol. But in addition to that, my husband was a very abusive person in terms of emotional abuse that he brought into our home, my son and myself. And so with all of this, it seemed like my worst nightmare, and I really didn't know who to go to. Being a pastor, I didn't know who I could talk to about this. I didn't know what course of action to take, because I felt like no one would believe me, first of all, if I told them that my husband was into all of this bondage and brokenness, because many people in this area knew how much of an anointed person he was in the gospel. So my first move was to go to a clinical counselor to get some direction. And after several sessions with the clinical counselor, the counselor said to me, after I think maybe my third or fourth visit, she said, you know, I feel I have taken you as far as I can take you with this. She said, but because of the dynamics of your situation, because you are in ministry, because you and your husband pastor a church, because there are other families involved, I feel that you really need spiritual counseling. And so that was the Holy Spirit telling me, you know, yes, I know you feel like there's no safe place to go in the spiritual community, but you must. And so I began to pray and ask the Lord, who can I go to? Where is a safe place where I can feel that I can talk about this crisis? I can have a prayer covering. And I must say also that with the news coming out, you know, with the exposure of my husband's brokenness, it affected our church big time, because families literally just started walking away. And all that remained was just a small remnant. So I had to make some very tough decisions. I had to ask some very hard questions. I had to take a look at what I would do with the church, with the remnant that remained. I had to seek the Lord about whether to dissolve the ministry or just where to go with it. And I also had to make a decision about my marriage, which was very hard. And I realized that my husband was in total denial about his issues, total denial. And I knew that with him being in denial, he was not getting help, and he was on the road of destruction. I had to make that tough decision to not go on that and continue on that road with him. And so I made the decision to divorce him and to move on with my life. And I sought the Lord about what to do with the ministry. It's interesting how I came to Mount Gilead. After going to, the Lord led me to a ministry. Before I came to Mount Gilead, He led me to a ministry for counseling, for prayer counseling. It was known as Set Free. That ministry played a pivotal role in my getting through my crisis, getting the help I needed, getting the undergirding I needed, the prayer support, and all of that. It was pivotal. The second piece in my being able to come through the crisis and to be here where I am today was Mount Gilead. Mount Gilead, I was seeking the Lord. I had gone through counseling at Set Free, and I was really getting my bearings. I had come a long ways, really getting my bearings, really getting, they helped to bring some stability to my situation. I was seeking the Lord about what to do about the Christ Ascension Church. That was the name of our church. And the Holy Spirit just began to deal with me. I began to look at where I wanted to take the ministry. I really wasn't ready to let it go. I just felt like I got to be sure, because I just felt like I didn't want to let the Lord down in that area. So I said to the Lord, give me direction. I called up Fox TV because one of the things that was in my spirit to do was to do small group work and to maybe consider doing a talk show, a televised talk show, where I could deal with issues, such as the issues I had worked through with my husband. And so I called up a representative from Fox TV. And to my amazement, after having shared with her what was in my spirit as far as the ministry, she said this to me, and it just blew me away. She said, why don't you think about going to the Mount Gilead Full Gospel International Ministries? She said, because a lot of the things you're doing and a lot of the things that you have shared that's in your heart, they're doing these things, and it just sounds like it would be a good fit. And I kind of I heard her, and I just kind of put it aside, but I didn't really give it a lot of thought. But now looking back, when I think about that moment, I think about how God often speaks to us. And for me, that was like the Lord picked up a little stone and tossed it out upon the water and caused a rippling effect. And that's what he does when he wants to get our attention. Sometimes he wants to just make a ripple on the water. And that's just to get us to start thinking about something. Not to do anything, but to just start thinking about it. So with that, with her coming for that appointment, that got me to thinking about Mount Gilead. The second thing that happened as far as the things that the Lord did progressively and strategically to bring me here to Mount Gilead, the second thing that happened is my husband passed. About 3 years after our divorce, he passed. He died suddenly of a massive heart attack. And our son and I made the decision that we wanted to have a memorial service. It was his request that he wanted to donate his remains to medical science, and he wanted his remains thereafter to be cremated. But we decided to have a memorial service in his honor here at Mount Gilead. And the Lord, just blessed us and gave us favor to come, because we had not joined Mount Gilead at the time, but we knew some other people that were here. And so they suggested that we come to Mount Gilead for the memorial service. So that was the second thing that happened. And now that I look back on it, I can just see how the Lord was just all up in it. I could just hear the voice of the Lord just like a bass drum, just telling me, okay, you come to Mount Gilead. So I put a fleece out before the Lord, and I said, I'm going to go to Mount Gilead and check this out. And I said, Lord, if it's for me to be there, if this is to be my home. At this point where I had put this request before the Lord, I had already gotten the witness from the Holy Spirit to dissolve the ministry that we had built up. Just to close it out, dissolve it. I had met with the trustees, and we had come to that agreement, and we had already had closed it out. So at that point, I was looking for a church home. It was not in my spirit to try to start a new ministry. It was just to find a good church home and get some healing. And so I said to the Lord, if it's for me to come to Mount Gilead, if this is where you are really sending me, if this is where my home is to be, I said, when I go there to visit, let me feel your peace. Let me feel it in an incredible way. Let me feel your peace like a blanket, a comfy blanket. And that's how I felt when I came. It's so amazing. I felt the peace of God when I came into Mount Gilead that Sunday. I felt the peace of God, and I felt like I was in a safe place, and I felt like I had come home. It was a tremendous weight that had lifted off of me. And the message that Bishop Robertson preached that day was such a strong faith message. Now remember, I was still working through crisis. I was working through financial issues. I had to find a way to support myself. I was just working through a lot of different things. So I had to really move up in my faith. I had to go up to another level like I had never experienced before. I had to really trust God in the face of all kinds of adversity, waves of it, one thing on top of another. I was in a place where no one could really help me. I had people that loved me. I had family members that loved me. My mom was still living. She's still living now. I had brothers, friends that loved me. But they, sometimes the Lord puts us in places where we cannot go to anyone for help. We just have to trust Him to bring us out. And that's the kind of place I was in. And looking back, I see where God was really stretching me, and He was growing me in my faith, because that was necessary to take me to another level of maturity. During that time, I saw the love of God manifested upon me in a way that I've never known before. I received Christ at a young age, but I've walked with Him for years, but I had not until this crisis really seen the depth of the Father's love for me, not like I did during this time. So this is how I ended up at Mount Gilead. When I first came to Mount Gilead, I was so tired, and I was just worn out just from all of the fallout of the storm. And all I wanted to do is just come and sit and hear the word. I just wanted to get strength and get built back up. I didn't want to minister to anybody. I didn't want to join any auxiliaries. I didn't want to sign up for anything. I just wanted to and a lot of time, and at that time too, I had started a business. I was working 7 days a week. I was working 11-hour days. That left little time for rest. That left little time for anything. And so I was so tired, all I could do was barely come in the door at Mount Gilead, get some of the word, and then just go back and try to rest a little bit. But anyway, that's how I came to Mount Gilead. Well, one of the things that happens in most any situation where there is divorce, there's always financial crisis attached to that. And so one of the things I had to remember, I was working for the church full time at the time that my husband was arrested and all of this, the crisis started. I had left a full-time job with DuPont. I was working for the church full time, and so with this and with the families walking away, it threw not only my personal life into crisis, but it threw the church into crisis. It affected the church financially. There was not enough money coming in, so I had to make a decision to sell the property. I had to make a decision about finding employment, and at this time I was in my 40s. And who wants to hire somebody full-time in their 40s, especially if you're in your mid to late 40s? So everything I would try to do, I was trying to apply for jobs here and there. But after nothing materialized, I just felt led to start a business. So that opened the door for me to start a business in the beauty industry. Beauty consultations, cosmetics, and that type of thing. But it totally changed my life because I found myself in situations when I was working through the crisis where there was not enough money. There just was not enough money. There were times when it was not enough money to eat, not enough money for gas, just bare minimals. But through all of that, I never went without. The Lord always met every need. It was like He was saying, I'm not going to let you see how you're going to make it. I'm not going to let you see where the provision is. I'm just going to watch you to see if you're going to trust me. And so I had to trust Him. I had to trust Him for everything. And in addition to that, at the time that the crisis started, not long before it started, I was in an automobile accident, and as a result of that, I was having some ongoing chronic pain. I had a herniated disc, had surgery, but even after the surgery, I had some chronic pain. So along with everything else, I was dealing with pain, and I was on pain medication. I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, just like you told me you're going to bring me out of this, just like you told me you're going to bring restoration, because I had to release the home I was in. I had to release the car I was driving. It was a Lexus ES 300. I had to just downsize. I had to put, it was, and I never thought I would ever come. The other thing that I experienced, once I filed for divorce, I realized that how much immense debt we were in. During the course of my marriage, my husband always insisted on handling our budget, handling the affairs of the household, the financial affairs, which I didn't have problems with that. I interpreted him saying, honey, I don't want you opening the mail out, I don't want you being concerned about the bills or the budget. Let me take care of all of that. I interpreted that to mean he was looking out for me, and I trusted him. But little did I know that he was really hiding debt. He was hiding a lot of his secret spending habits. And all of this came out when a lot of the other secrets came out. So I found myself devastated, looking at thousands and thousands of, in fact, just in credit card debt, over $80,000. And I knew that I would have worked myself to death trying to repay that kind of debt. And so I had to make a decision. Okay, file bankruptcy. And so the Lord spoke to me during that time, because I felt, on top of everything else, I felt a lot of shame. I felt like, how could my life come to this? But this is what the Holy Spirit said to me. And I'm saying this because someone that may be watching and listening to this, you need to hear this. The Lord said to me that bankruptcy is a tool not for getting over, but it is a tool for getting up out of crisis. And so the Lord has brought me a long way since then. I want to say that regardless of what kind of crisis an individual might be in, the Lord has the power to bring you out. And regardless of what kind of crisis you find yourself in, you still have power and you still have possibilities. So in the midst of my crisis, in fact, at the very beginning of it, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, I want you to write a book. I want you to write a book about beginning again. And the Lord said this book will be a tool to help other families, especially those who are in leadership in the Christian community, who struggle with brokenness but are in hiding and don't feel there's a place to go for help. And he said to me to write this book and that it would be a tool for healing. But the other thing he said to me was that as I wrote, and I have a copy of the book right here, it's called Yes, You Can Begin Again. The Lord said to me that as I write this book, I would receive healing myself. He said to me I would receive emotional healing because, remember, I had a lot of anger to work through. I had a lot of unforgiveness to work through. In fact, the first draft of my book, it was not in publishable form because the Lord said it's too much anger between the pages. It's too much unforgiveness. The Lord said, put it aside, and I'm going to tell you when to pick it back up. It was not a waste to write the draft because it helped me to vent. So after maybe about 6 years later, the Holy Spirit told me to pick the manuscript back up. It was time to go back, edit, finish, find a publisher. And so during the course of my writing the book, God did so many awesome things for me. I worked through the unforgiveness. I realized, the Lord showed me how, we hear all these sermons about forgive, let things go. It sounds good, but you wonder, how in the world do I do it? Well, the Lord showed me how to do it. And that's what I've put in the book here. But the Lord, he helped me to release my bad feelings toward my husband. He helped me to see him in his humanity. That when you see someone in their humanity, it doesn't mean you don't hold them responsible for their wrongdoing, but you look beyond the wrongdoing and you see them in their humanity, and you see them that as human beings who make mistakes and bad choices, just like we sometimes do the same thing. So the Lord helped me to work through that, and he also brought healing to my injury, my physical injury. I began, just like I began to thank the Lord and celebrate restoration, even when I didn't see how it would happen. I also began to thank Him for my physical healing. When I couldn't stand very long without pain in the back of my neck. I couldn't sit very long. I couldn't even turn my head over my shoulder to back my car out of my driveway without pain. So all of these were variables that I had to deal with as I was working through my situation. So I just said, Lord, I'm just going to believe that this thing is done. And so the worse the pain was, the more I praised Him. The worse, the more unlikely it looked like I would be delivered. The less likely my healing appeared to be, the more I would thank Him. And I would say, Lord, I just thank You. When I would feel pain, I said, Lord, I thank You. I'm healed. I don't feel this. I'm not going to feel this pain the rest of my life. Lord, I thank You. I'm not going to be on this pain medicine. The pain medicine I was on would make me feel so groggy. I felt like I couldn't function. So I can understand how people feel that are on pain medicine. You do not want to have to be on it the rest of your life. So by the time I got through writing the book, I don't know what day it happened. I just know that one day I noticed there was no more pain in the back of my neck. I noticed that it didn't hurt when I stood or sat. I didn't have to take pain medicine. It was the most wonderful, awesome feeling. And that's how the Lord has dealt with me through my crisis and restoration. It didn't come all at once. And the Lord said to me, it's so amazing. There's so much I want to share, and I know we're limited for time. It's so amazing how God worked with me and just walked me through it, because He literally walked me through it. And at times when I felt like I couldn't make it, He carried me. He just carried me. But the Lord said to me, when it comes to restoration, and I know a lot of people are waiting for their own restoration from loss, from brokenness, and what have you. The Lord said that there are two key elements to restoration. One is patience. It's a word we don't like to hear. But the Lord said patience is a part of restoration, and perseverance is a part of restoration. The reason they're a great part, they play a great part in it, is because restoration does not come about in an instant. There is a process in restoration. Every time we see where there was restoration in the Bible, there was always a process involved. And so I delight in sharing my story, because I feel that it will help someone in their place of waiting. As they are waiting for their own restoration, I believe it will help ignite their faith, and it will help their faith to make it to the finish line. About 3 years after I filed bankruptcy, the Lord blessed me to buy a home of my own. Incredible story. Incredible how He did it. But He gave me a home, and when it comes to restoration, the Lord is very meticulous. I've discovered that about Him. He's very detailed about how He brings our restoration. Because I said to the Lord spoke to me. I had already joined Mount Gilead. The Lord spoke to me through Bishop Robinson one Sunday, and He said, somebody in here needs to start looking for a house. He said, go on out there and start looking. Stop worrying about how you're going to pay for it. Stop worrying about how it's going to happen. You just need to go out there and start looking for a house. And I heard the voice of God in His voice. I went out and started looking for a house. And so the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, write down what you want. Tell me what you want. I told the Lord what kind of house I wanted. I told Him how I wanted the house to be in move-in condition. I told Him what kind of colors I wanted in the house and all that. Well, the Lord gave me everything. Once I saw the house, I went into it to look at it for the first time. Everything that I had on my list, it was in the house. Everything I had on my list, even down to the colors on the wall. The previous owner had repainted, refurbished the home. She had put brand new carpet in. The colors I love, the colors I absolutely love, were on the walls. the seller even said to me, she said she left a thank you card on the kitchen counter. Once I closed, she left a thank you card on the kitchen counter saying, thank you for purchasing this home, and I hope you will enjoy it as much as I have. And she left a gift card for me to go buy something for myself that I would enjoy for the home. But that's not all. The Lord moved so quickly in getting me in that home that the seller didn't have time to find her house yet. I was ready to close like in 30 days. That's how quickly God moved with my finances and everything, supernaturally. Well, the seller said, is it okay if I rent from you for 30 days to give myself more time to find a home? I keep telling you, God has a sense of humor. And so that's how we did it. So on top of, it was just incredible. It was just incredible how God did it. And so here I am 8 years later. I'm looking back, and I'm on the other side of this thing. I'm looking back at how God brought me out, and it is a good feeling, a good feeling. I want to say that I just want to re-emphasize how by my coming to Mount Gilead, the Lord brought me to a ministry that preached a strong faith message. And I needed that strong faith message to pull in what God wanted to manifest. And so one of the things that I said to the Lord years ago, after He made the promise to me of restoration, He told me He was going to give me another car, another Lexus, another home, and so many other things. One of the things I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, when you bring the restoration, I want you to bring it in such a way that everyone will know you did it. They will know. It's no way in the world Juanita Adams could have done this on her own. Not in her own strength, not in her own intellect, not in a million years. It had to be God. And so the way God brought that, now the Lexus, it's the timing of it is supernatural. The fact that God laid it upon the hearts of my leaders, Bishop Robinson and co-pastor Elena, that they would want to bless me this way, was supernatural. They had no knowledge that I was having problems with the car I was driving. It was just putting me down anywhere. I couldn't trust it to get anywhere. I was afraid to put it on the road because it just, it would just break down. But the Lord just orchestrated all of this. So what's so remarkable, besides the fact that I'm still on cloud 9, I'm just numb at how God did it and what He did. The Lord orchestrated the timing in such a phenomenal way. The month of July is when the Lord presented me with this new Lexus ES 350 through my leaders, through Pastor Bishop and co-pastor Elena. It was the month of July 10 years ago that I surrendered my first Lexus. It was the month of July 10 years ago that I bought that Taurus that's just, on its last leg. So the fact that the Lord brought the restoration of this vehicle in the same month that I lost the other one is very monumental to me. The other thing is, I know the Lord brought it to my attention through Bishop Robertson, how there were many challenges in them getting this car to us. It's just a lot of spiritual warfare. And so what the Lord said to me after hearing this from Bishop Robertson, the Holy Spirit said to me, the reason for the warfare being so intense, just obstacles, just crazy things getting in the way, delays and this, that, and the other, the Lord said was because the restoration is not just about my restoration. It's not just about me, but it's about the restoration of many. Because so many people need to hear about the power of God and how He's a God that's faithful to His promise, that even though we don't see how He's doing it, even when it looks like nothing's going on, even when it seems like He's quiet, He's not speaking. He's not saying anything. It might seem like he's forgotten us. It may seem like he's taken us backwards instead of moving us forward. Sometimes all of these things are caught up in the dynamics. But God is saying through what he has done for me with this car, that he is faithful to his promise, that he will go to the length, he will go to extremes to deliver to us what he promised. And not only will he go to extremes to deliver what he promised, he makes the devil pay back with interest so that he gives us extra. So this Lexus is a nicer one than the one I surrendered. It's an upgrade. It's black. It has a beautiful cream interior. It rides so good. It smells good. I love the way it smells. It feels so good. It's so comfortable. It is just the creme de la creme. I just love it. And I am so touched so deeply at the love of God and the love of my leaders. I tell you, I'm going to be laughing at what God has done well into my old age. I just love him. I just love him. And I thank God for my leaders. And I thank God that I'm able to tell my story. I could choose to not tell about the darkness and the horrific part of my story. I could allow pride to shame me into silence. It was not easy for me to talk about my part in the brokenness because in some ways, when I look back, I had to admit that I was codependent. I allowed abuse. I allowed my husband to emotional abuse me, and I should not have. So it's just a lot of things. So for me to have the courage, God gave me the courage to speak and share boldly about his goodness and about what he's done for me, so that he would be glorified and many would be blessed. And that's what this is about. Him getting the glory and you getting the blessing. The name of my book is Yes, You Can Begin Again. As I said earlier, the book was born out of immense pain, my most challenging periods of my life. But it's a book for rebuilding. It not only talks about what I dealt with, it not only talks about my challenges, but it talks about hope. It talks about getting up from the ashes. It talks about being powerful. It talks about recognizing that you are not helpless, even in the midst of crisis. It talks about your possibilities. And it gives you some principles that will just help you regardless of what kind of crisis you have or what might have prompted it. This book, I recommend it for anyone, and especially leaders in the Christian community. It's available at the Mount Gilead Transformation Center. It's also available on Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble. You can order it and pick it up at the store and avoid shipping costs. And so I would love for you to get a copy of my book, and please tell anyone you know that's in crisis to check it out.